Hello everybody and welcome to the first episode to this Guide to Flight Simulator. In this episode I'm going to go over some basic concepts of flying, as these are really important to understand how simulator works and how flying in general works. Let's get started. I'm situated in a Cessna 172 on Amsterdam's Schiphol Airport, runway 22, and I'm in the G1000 model with the navigation displays, as this will mimic the systems of an airliner much better when we get into the more advanced series. First of all, I want to go over the aerodynamic concepts of flying. There's four main different forces which have to be taken into consideration when flying. First of all, there's gravity, pulling the aircraft down to the ground. We have drag, pulling the aircraft backwards, or air resistance, acting in the opposite direction of thrust, and thrust is generated by the engine and should push the aircraft forward. And finally we have lift, and that is what pulls the aircraft up. And in order to fly, thrust has to be greater than drag, so the engine has to generate more power to overcome the air resistance, and lift has to be greater than gravity in order to come off the ground. Well, how do you generate lift, you might ask? Well, as you can see here very clearly in these Cessna wings, they have a sort of shape which allows for air to travel straight at it and then go over and under it. Now, as you can see, because of the way it's shaped, the way over the top is a bit longer than the way over the bottom. And this means that there will be a pressure difference below and above the wings, and this will generate lift. Now, in order to generate lift, as I said, you need air flowing over the wings. In order to get air flowing over the wings, you require thrust, as the airplane has to move. At one point, if thrust is great enough, so if the engine is generating enough power, then there will be sufficient lift generated, as there will be enough air traveling over the wings, and this should be enough to overcome gravity. And the thrust of the engine will then also overcome drag, pulling the aircraft back. Those are the primary aerodynamic forces acting upon the aircraft. But if we want to control the aircraft, we're going to have to need control surfaces in order to steer it in the direction we want to. There's a couple of main control surfaces on the plane which we can control. Starting off at the back of the plane, we have this flap here, which you can see moving now, up and down, and that's called the elevator. The elevator determines our altitude. If we pull, as you can see, back on our yoke, you can see that the elevator moves up as well. And this changes the airflow over this rear wing, and therefore changes our pitch, which is the angle of our nose in comparison to the horizon. And if we push our yoke forward or down, we can see that the elevator moves down as well, and therefore we will pitch down. Staying at the back of the aircraft, we have the rudder, as you can see moving now, and this is controlled using the rudder pedals in the cockpit, which you can see below, and you can see as they move, so does the rudder. What does the rudder do? Well, it's primarily used for ground movement, so in taxiing, if aircraft don't have a nose tiller, and in flight, if it's necessary to counter a very heavy crosswind, so wind coming from a perpendicular direction to the plane. During landing, it will help you correct that wind. It's not used very often in order to control the angle of the wing, so moving left to right, as this is left for the ailerons. You can see them moving on either side of the wing. And let's say we put the yoke into left position, full left. We can see that the left aileron moves up and the right aileron moves down. This changes the airflow on the left side and right side of the wing, and meaning that we will now pitch left. If both of these would go up, it would counterbalance each other, and then we would not turn at all. So that's why they move in opposite directions of each other. And if we move our yoke right, we can see the right aileron move up and the left aileron move down. And then in order to control thrust, we have our engine. This is controlled using the thrust lever here. As you can see now, it's moving in and out. And this is seen in larger aircraft in the pedestal with larger throttles. It's important to note that thrust doesn't only impact our speed, but it will also impact our altitude. If we increase the power and increase the thrust, there will be more air flowing over the wings at a higher rate, and that will increase lift and therefore increase our altitude. This also happens in the opposite direction, as if we decrease thrust, less air flowing over the wings at a lower rate, therefore our altitude will decrease. This also means that the lower our speed, the less control we have over the aircraft. And this leads me on to the stall. What is a stall? A stall occurs if the aircraft is in the air and there's not enough air flowing over the wings. This will therefore lead to no lift and the aircraft will fall right out of the sky. I'm going to very briefly demonstrate how this works. I will power on the aircraft by increasing the throttle and keep it on the center line using the rudder. See the pedals moving. And as we have enough power to overcome drag, we have our positive airspeed, enough lift, so we can pull back and take off. Now I'll demonstrate what a stall is. If I pull back too far, the angle of the wings in comparison to the horizon is too steep. There's no more lift that's being generated. Our airspeed decreases. And as you can see, even though my throttle is in the full position, the airspeed is now so low that we start to tumble out of the sky. And this can be corrected if the airspeed increases fast enough. I will circle back to demonstrate a landing, and this leads on to the final control surface which I will mention. And these are the flaps. The flaps are control surfaces on the back of the wing. You can see them here. I will extend them now. You can see them extending. And what they do is they increase the surface area of the wing, therefore increasing the amount of lift it can generate at a lower airspeed. And this is useful when coming into land, as we want to come in at the lowest possible airspeed without having a stall. And in order to do so, the surface area of the wings is increased and therefore generates more lift at a lower speed. However, keep in mind that at a higher speed these flaps have to be retracted, as they decrease the airflow over the wings and therefore will limit speed. And on an airliner, something which also impacts the airflow around the airplane is the gear. However, in this aircraft the gear is fixed and we cannot retract it, as it has a minimal impact on its aerodynamic qualities. But in a larger aircraft they're much bigger and therefore also have a larger aerodynamic impact, slowing the aircraft down a lot more. Coming into land, you can see that my airspeed is drastically decreasing. And again, I am trying to ensure that thrust is greater than drag. And using the elevator and ailerons, I successfully land the plane. Using my toe brakes, by pushing the pedals forward, as you can see, I can brake and stop on the runway. That concludes this episode. I hope that you now understand how aerodynamics and control surfaces work. In the next episode, I'll be looking at the cold and dark start in an Airbus A320, which is a bigger airliner. Thank you for watching.